Hello everyone! Today I am here to film some of my favorite hard-hitting YA contemporaries. Recently I did a video talking about my favorite YA contemporaries and they were kind of the romance genre, super cute ones, but I do enjoy those, but I've also really enjoyed some really hard-hitting ones. And what does that mean? That means more intense, that the subject matter is just a lot more intense. It's not romance or cuteness at the core. It's a lot more serious subject matter. You know, they're books that will more than likely make you cry. I enjoy reading them from time to time when I'm in the mood because I have to be in a certain mood to read a sad book. Because that's just how I am. But I have read a lot of really hard-hitting, really good ones over the past few years that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, let's get into these. Obviously, there's gonna be trigger warnings for a lot of these. A lot of these talk about different subject matters. There's gun violence, there's death of like a loved one, maybe a family member, as far as like getting ill as well. There's just there's rape culture. There's just a lot of different things that are involved in all of these books. So just be warned going into that. But nevertheless, all of these books have really affected me in some sort of way, taught me something, and they're just amazing. So let's get into it. The first book I want to talk about is one that I've read like the longest ago, but is still one of my favorite hard-hitting ones. It may have been my first hard-hitting one I've read. I don't know. That is Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson. So if you don't know, Morgan Matson really writes a lot of fluffy, summery YA contemporary. And by the cover of this, you would think that is the same thing. No, no, no. It's quite different. Yes, it is cute. It does have a lot of serious matter at the core of it. So in this book, we follow a character named Taylor who has, she usually goes to their summer house with her parents every year, but she hasn't gone in so many years. And her parents decide, hey, let's go for one last summer. And I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm pretty sure you learn that one of her parents is not doing physically well. And so it's kind of like their last summer together. So Taylor goes there. She also runs into kind of her first crush named Henry. And so this summer is all about second chances for her to reconnect with her family, with her friends she once knew. And it's just a beautifully told book that really focuses on family, on friendship, and things like that. It will probably make you cry, but it's one of my favorite Morgan Matson books, honestly. Like, it was just really emotionally beautiful. Next up, we have one of my favorites. A lot of these are my favorites. A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti. I read this a few years ago and it blew me away. Like, it's a beautifully written book, first of all, and it covers a lot of really serious subject matter. So in this book, we follow a character named Annabelle, whose life was really great. She had a lot of friends, things were going in school, and then something tragic to her happened. And as a reader, you do not know. You have to kind of go through the book with Annabelle to figure out exactly what happened. So now Annabelle is very different. This event has really shaped her and really traumatized her, if you will. And so she runs. She's a good runner. She runs all the time, and she decides, hey, I'm gonna run from like Seattle to Washington, D.C. Or it's like this big thing that's happening in Washington, D.C. She's gonna do it to make a difference. And so like she kind of pairs up with her granddad who has an RV, and so her brother maps out their destination. So she runs a while she runs a while each day, then, you know, has dinner with her grandpa and sleeps in the RV, and they drive, and then, you know, more running. And it's just a very beautifully told book. Like, each chapter begins with like different things about the heart, if you will, and it's just, you figure out a lot about it. I will say, I don't want to spoil it for you for the subject matter because you don't know, but I feel like it could be a big trigger warning, so it is important to know that. So this book does talk a lot about gun violence and how that's really affected Annabelle. So I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you, but I do think that's important to know in case that triggers you, understandably so. But the way Deb Coletti writes it, the way Annabelle has to go through this is just beautiful and sad and just really intense, honestly. Next up, we have a recent read that I read. Did I read it last year? I think it may have been one of my final reads of the year. And that is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is actually the graphic novel version of it, and it's illustrated by Danica Novgorodov. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I haven't read the actual book. The actual book is told in verse. This one is honestly also told in verse, but it's with pictures, if you can't tell, which I think really resonated with the story. So this book, we follow a character named Will, whose life has really been kind of hard. He's lost his dad to gun violence, his uncle to gun violence. He just lost his brother at the beginning of this gun violence. And there's a set of rules that his family's always taught him, like the men in his family, like, you know, don't snitch, don't tell anybody, and like get revenge. And so he decides, I'm going to get revenge on the guy I think that killed my brother. And so he goes to this guy's apartment place, gets in the elevator, and all of a sudden the elevator starts going down. And on each floor, somebody from his past that has actually passed away gets on the floor. His uncle, his dad, his brother, other people that have lost their lives to gun violence. And the whole book kind of ends with will he kind of fall in the same trajectory path as these other people that do gun violence, or will he kind of start a new path and not go towards it? And obviously it talks about gun violence, if you can't tell, and it really teaches you. And I just love the way Jason Reynolds wrote this. He wrote it so eloquently, is that the right word? But it was very intense. You really saw a lot of different things that has gone on Will's life that has shaped him to who he's been and who he's going to be, and he has this big decision of whether or not to go through with this. And the book does end up on a cliffhanger, if you will. You don't quite know what exactly is going to happen, but gosh, this was an intense read, but it was amazing. Then we have The Names They Gave Us by Emery Lord. Oh, this one's sad. So this book, we follow a character named Lucy, who everything's going really good for Lucy. She's about to be a senior. She's like captain of the swim team now. Her mom has defeated cancer. Like everything's going really good for her. Her dad's a pastor. And then she learns that her mom's cancer has returned. And so what happens every summer is usually Lucy goes with her parents to this big church camp and things like that. But her mom wants her to go to the camp across like the lake where the troubled teens kind of go. She wants her to be a counselor there because her mom was one there and she's learned a lot from that. And so I want you to grant me this wish. I want you to go over to this camp and just learn from these teens that have had it really a lot. They've had a lot more struggles than you have, and just kind of learn from that. And so she does that begrudgingly because she does not want to leave her mom, obviously because she's sick. She meets new friends. She learns that about what's happening. And it's just, gosh, it's a book that's hard to read because cancer is a subject near and dear to my life as well. Like honestly, when I hear a tagline of a book that has cancer in it, I kind of stray away from that because I've experienced it a lot in my life. I also have really, really bad medical anxiety. So I'm just like, ugh, but it was a beautiful book. I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of books like that are, but you just have to be emotionally ready for it. And I really loved how this book also talked about faith because it's a hard thing to read as a faith-based person. If you don't know, I am religious, I am Christian, and I'm very, grounded in my faith. And so whenever I hear a book is kind of about that, I'm like, oh, are they gonna, paint it in a bad way? But I really love the way Emery Lord painted it. She painted it very realistic for me because Lucy struggled with her faith, as everyone does in their faith journey at some point. So just, have the tissues ready for this one. And all of them, probably. Next up, we have one that's like not quite super, super heavy, but I still wanted to mention it. And that is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. In this book, we follow a character named, you guessed it, Eliza. And she has this really popular web, series. Yeah, webcomic called Monstrous Sea. It is insanely popular. I don't know what platform it's on, but let's just say millions look for it every single week. And she keeps her identity hidden of who she actually is while writing it. And then she meets a new guy at school named Wallace, who actually she learns is Monstrous Sea's biggest fan fiction writer. And so Wallace thinks Eliza's just another fan of the comic. Little does he know that she actually is creating the thing, and a friendship relationship kind of really sparks from there. So the heaviness part of this book comes from Eliza. Eliza struggles a lot with anxiety, social anxiety, pressure with her family with anxiety of trying to keep, her identity separate from who she is online, where she's very open and free to express herself, where she's at in school, where she's very quiet. So this book does talk a lot about anxiety. As a person that struggles with anxiety, that takes medication, I identified a lot with this book, and I think it could help out with somebody, and just maybe somebody would feel seen with this book with anxiety. But It does have a lot of lightness in it with their relationship and cuteness, but it does talk a lot about anxiety as well, which is very important and also a very serious topic. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo is, oh, it's a beautiful book. It's a book told in verse. Elizabeth Acevedo is known for that. I've read 2 of her other books. One of them is in verse, and they're both beautiful as well, but Clap When You Land has got to be my favorite by her. We follow 2 characters, one named Camino and one named Yahira. So they both lead very different lives. So Yahira lives in New York. She's got a great mom. She's got a great dad. She goes to a great school. Everything's going great for her. But one thing she doesn't love is that her dad always goes away for the summer. Never really tells his family where he's going to like visit his brother, but she never really gets in contact with him, but he leaves every summer. Then on the flip side, we have Camino, who lives in the Dominican Republic with her grandmother. Her mom has passed away, and she really loves the summers where her dad comes to visit. Putting 2 and 2 together quite yet. And so this summer she's very excited for him to come, and he doesn't. He actually dies in a plane crash on his way to there. Basically, through a whole turn of events, Camino and Yahira realize that they share a father, and their lives are really changed from that because they never even knew each other existed. And so they kind of have to navigate this new relationship of sisterhood with their father just passing away. And it's just a really hard-hitting book told in verse that has so many really impactful verses, and just it's beautiful all around. And it's a book that I think everyone should read. You'll get a lot from it. You'll learn a lot from it. Either way, everyone should read this book. It's beautifully told, very impactful, very intense. Just, gosh, I wish Elizabeth Acevedo wrote like a book every month. I would read them all the time. Like, they're that amazing. Then we have You'll Miss Me When I'm Gone by Rachel Lynn Solomon. So this is the first book I read by her, and Rachel Lynn Solomon writes really kind of hard-hitting books, except for her latest release, which was like totally the flip side. So in this book, we follow twin sisters, and they don't get along. They really don't. Something that happened to them a while ago has just really affected their relationship. But their mother has Huntington's disease. They learn that when they're 18, they can take this blood test to figure out if they will also have Huntington's disease, because I believe it's shared in the bloodstream and genes and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not to spoil anything. One of them learns that they are going to have it, and one of them doesn't. So you really get to figure out both of these sisters, how they're both very different, and they're both like coping with their diagnosis and also coping with their mom as well, and their dad. They're also Jewish. They also are Jewish as well, so you learn a lot about the Jewish religion and culture. And gosh, it was a sad read. Like, gosh, it's sad, but she writes amazingly. Like, I love how each one of her books also teaches a lot about the Jewish culture, because I don't know much about it, but this is my favorite one by her. It's just so intense. Like, it's sad, but it was really good. Next up, we have Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. So this book is, I call it the parenthood of TV show in a book. I don't know why. I love that show. Can't rewatch it though because it's so freaking sad. But this book we learn, so in this book we have 3 characters to read about: Grace, Maya, and Joaquin. And so each of them lead very different lives. Grace is the only child who was adopted at birth, and she discovers that she is the middle child of a family that she never even knew. And then we have Maya, who is also adopted, lives in a house with all of her sisters that are biological, and she really struggles with that. And then we have Joaquin, who kind of bounces from foster home to foster home, and he's finally at a home where he really loves the parents, but he doesn't know if they're gonna keep him. And so basically they all learn that they share the same mother. And so they all learn that they're together. So how they learn together is Grace actually is the one that's adopted, that's the only child. She actually becomes pregnant at 16 and decides to give her baby up for adoption. And so going through that, she knows that she's adopted. She decides, hey, let me research some. And then she finds Maya and Joaquin. And so they kind of go on the search for their birth mother. And whew, goodness me, it's a book that's about found family at its core, which is amazing. It's a book that shows you that just because your family's not like blood family, biological, things like that. They're still your family. And it's just, it was beautiful to read about. This one was so sad, but also amazing as these siblings found each other and found their groove with each other. Just a beautiful book about found family. The How and the Why by Cynthia Hands. So this book has such a cool premise. So we follow a character named Cassandra who has an amazing family, a loving father, a loving dad, and she knows that she is adopted. And so I think like on her birthday, she decides that, hey, I'm going to try to figure out where I came from, who are my parents. And so she finds these letters that her mom, her biological mom, actually wrote to her when she was still in the womb. And she learns so much about her mom. Like it's basically goes back and forth of her mom when she was pregnant with Cassandra, and then Cassandra now discovering all these things. And it's just, I love the way that she wrote it, of how you learned why her mom decided to give her up for adoption, the journey she's gone through it, and how Cassandra is dealing with it now. It's just another book, again, about found family, about adoption, and just the beautifulness of it. It's just beautiful. I loved it a ton. And the last book I would recommend is Little Do We Know by Tamiya Ireland Stone. I read this like 3 years ago. I loved it. I don't think it's as intense as the other ones, but I still think it's like a serious subject matter. I don't know why I did that, but whatever. This book follows two characters named Hannah and Emery who are next door neighbors and ex-best friends. Something happened. You don't know what. And they both are very different. And so, Emery is trying to, you know, get into UCLA and trying to make the most of her months before she has left with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Hannah's strong faith is shaken when her family's financial problems come to light. And so she kind of turns to Emery. And so this book, again, is a lot about faith because Hannah's father is a pastor and she struggles a lot with her faith in this book. And she has to, you know, kind of navigate that, and how her friendship with Emery really kind of helps with that. And it's a book all about friendship, like friendship that's kind of broken apart but maybe coming back together again. Also about faith, family. Just, it's a beautiful book. It's not quite as intense as all the other ones, but it's still kind of more intense, I would say, than like your regular like cutesy fluffy book because it's mostly about like family and friend relationships at its core. Those are all of my favorite hard-hitting YA contemporary books. Quite a lot of them, but I really love each of them for each different ways, obviously. And yeah, I would love to hear if you've read any of these, if you like them a lot, if they impacted you as much as they impacted me. I would love to hear. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.